The sun hadn't even cleared the horizon when Sergeant First Class Marcus Reeves realized they had a problem, a big one. The kind that could derail an entire training exercise and make everyone from the company commander down to the newest private look like idiots. And it was sitting right there in Bay 3 of the motor pool at Fort Hood, Texas. 68 tons of non-functioning, stubbornly silent M1 Abrams main battle tank. It was supposed to be ready. It had to be ready. The quarterly Armor Brigade combat team exercise was scheduled to kick off in less than 48 hours. 36 tanks, 12 Bradley fighting vehicles, full combined arms maneuvers across the training grounds. Generals will be watching, evaluations will be written, careers will be impacted, and Tank 7, the command vehicle for 2nd Platoon, wouldn't start. Reeves stood in front of the beast, arms crossed, jaw tight. He'd been a tank mechanic for 14 years, worked on Abrams for most of that time. He knew these machines inside and out, could rebuild a turbine, engine, blindfolded if he had to. But this was different. This was personal. Because he'd already spent 2 days trying to figure out what the hell was wrong, and he was no closer to an answer than when he started. Behind him, 5 other mechanics stood in various states of frustration. Specialist Torres, the youngest, was scrolling through technical manuals on a tablet. Staff Sergeant Kim was under the tank with a flashlight, checking fuel lines for the 3rd time. Private First Class Jackson was staring at the engine compartment like it had personally insulted him. Sergeant Walls was on his 2nd energy drink of the morning and looked like he hadn't slept. And Corporal Hayes was just shaking his head, muttering something about computers and how tanks used to be simpler. The problem was maddeningly elusive. The tank had power. Batteries were good. Fuel was flowing. Electronics checked out. All the diagnostics came back green. Everything said the tank should start. But when you turned the key, nothing. No ignition, no turbine spool up. Just silence. Like the tank had decided it was done and no amount of pleading or threatening was going to change its mind. Reeves had called in favors, reached out to contacts at other bases, even got on a video call with a civilian contractor who'd worked on Abrams for 20 years. Nobody had an answer. The contractor's final advice had been, sometimes you just have to replace the whole power pack and hope for the best, which would take a week, which they didn't have. Company Commander Captain Lisa Hernandez had stopped by twice already that morning. The first time, she'd been professional, calm. "How's it going, Sergeant Reeves?" The second time, an hour later, her calm had worn thin. "I need that tank operational by tomorrow morning. I don't care if you have to sacrifice a goat to the machine gods. Make it happen." Reeves had nodded, said, "Yes, ma'am," but inside, he was starting to panic because he didn't know what else to try. They checked everything, done everything, and the tank was still dead. At 0900 hours, Torres looked up from his tablet. "Sarge, I found a forum post from 2003. Guy had a similar issue. Said it was a faulty relay in the fire suppression system." Reeves perked up. "Which relay?" "Doesn't say. Just says he found it by process of elimination." Kim crawled out from under the tank, wiping grease from his hands. "We already checked the fire suppression. Tested every relay. All good." Torres shrugged. "I'm just saying what the post said." Jackson kicked the track in frustration. "This is bullshit. We've tried everything. Maybe the contractor's right. Maybe we just need to swap the whole thing." Reeves shook his head. "We don't have time. And even if we did, there's no guarantee that's the problem." Walls crumpled his empty energy drink can. "So what do we do?" Before Reeves could answer, a voice came from behind them. Older, steady, with the kind of gravelly tone that comes from decades of yelling over engine noise. "Having some trouble, boys?" They all turned. Standing at the entrance to the bay was an old man. Had to be in his 80s. White hair, neatly combed, weathered face with deep lines that spoke of too much sun and not enough sleep. He wore jeans, a plaid shirt, and a windbreaker with a patch on the shoulder. Reeves squinted at it. 1st Armored Division, old school patch, Vietnam era. The old man walked toward them slowly, a slight limp in his left leg. His eyes were locked on the tank. Not with the curiosity of a civilian, but with the recognition of someone who knew exactly what he was looking at. Torres spoke first. Sir, this is a restricted area. Authorized personnel only. The old man smiled faintly. I know. Got a visitor's pass from the base commander. Old friend of mine. He gestured at the tank. That's an M1A2, right? SEP V3 variant. Kim blinked. Yeah, how'd you know? The old man pointed at the turret. Upgraded armor package. Crow's 2 remote weapon station. Trophy active protection system. Only the V3 has all that. He looked at Reeves. You the senior mechanic? Reeves straightened. Yes, sir. Sergeant First Class Reeves. The old man extended a hand. Frank Holloway. Used to work on tanks a long time ago. They shook. Holloway's grip was firm, confident. Reeves noticed calluses. Working hands. With all respect, sir. We've got a situation here. We're kind of on a deadline. Holloway nodded. I can see that. Won't start? Reeves hesitated, then figured, what the hell? No, sir. Everything checks out. Diagnostics are clean, but it won't turn over. We've been at it for 2 days. Holloway walked closer to the tank, ran his hand along the hull, almost affectionately. Mind if I take a look? Jackson laughed. Couldn't help himself. No offense, Pops, but we've had 6 trained mechanics on this for 48 hours. I don't think... Reeves cut him off with a glare. Jackson, shut it. He looked at Holloway. Sir, I appreciate the offer, but we've tried everything. Holloway's expression didn't change. Just patient, calm. Humor an old man. 5 minutes. If I can't help, I'll get out of your way. Reeves looked at his team. They looked skeptical. But what did they have to lose? All right, sir. 5 minutes. Holloway smiled. Thank you. He walked to the rear of the tank, opened the engine compartment access panel, stood there for a moment, just listening. The mechanics exchanged glances. Listening to what? The tank wasn't even running. Then Holloway climbed up onto the deck, moved with surprising agility for his age. He opened the crew commander's hatch and dropped inside. Reeves started to say something, but Walls put a hand on his shoulder, let him do his thing. A minute passed, then 2. They could hear Holloway moving around inside, opening panels, checking connections. Finally, his voice called out, Somebody try starting her up. Reeves climbed up, leaned into the hatch. Sir, we've tried that about 50 times. I know. Try it again. Reeves sighed, dropped into the driver's seat, and went through the startup sequence. Master power, fuel pump, ignition, and just like the last 50 times, nothing. He called back. See? Dead. Holloway's voice was thoughtful. Interesting. Do it again. But this time, when you hit ignition, listen carefully. Not for what you hear, for what you don't. Reeves frowned but complied. He went through the sequence again. Master power, fuel pump. And as his finger hovered over the ignition, he focused. Really listened. Hit the button. And in the silence that followed, he caught it. Or rather, didn't catch it. There should have been a relay click, a specific sound when the ignition sent power to the fuel control. It should have been almost imperceptible. But he didn't hear it. Holloway's voice came from behind him. You didn't hear the fuel relay, did you? Reeves turned. No, but we tested all the relays. They're fine. Holloway nodded. You tested them individually. But did you test them under load, in sequence, with the master power fluctuating? Reeves blinked. No. That's not in the manual. Holloway smiled. I know. It wasn't in the manual in 1981 either, but it should have been. He reached past Reeves and pulled open a small access panel near the driver's right knee. Behind it was a junction box, 6 relays. Holloway pointed to the 3rd one from the left. That one. It's got an intermittent fault. Works fine when tested individually. But when the system draws full power on startup, it fails for just a split second. Just long enough to prevent ignition. Reeves stared at the relay. How do you know? Holloway pulled the relay out, held it up to the light, squinted. See that? Hairline crack in the housing. Causes a micro short under load. It's a manufacturing defect. We had the same issue on the XM1 prototypes back in the day. He handed the relay to Reeves. Swap it out. She'll start. Torres, who'd been listening from outside, called up, "Sarge, we got spares?" Kim jogged to the parts locker. Came back 2 minutes later with a new relay. Tossed it up to Reeves. Reeves swapped it. The old one out, the new one in. Secured the panel. He looked at Holloway. "That's it?" Holloway climbed out of the turret. "That's it. Give her a try." Reeves sat back in the driver's seat, took a breath, went through the sequence one more time. Master power, fuel pump, ignition. The relay clicked, clear, distinct, and then the most beautiful sound he'd heard in 2 days. The turbine spooling up, the engine roaring to life, the whole tank vibrating with power. The mechanics outside erupted. Hayes threw his hat in the air. Torres was laughing. Kim just stood there shaking his head in disbelief. Jackson looked like someone had just told him the earth was flat and proven it. Reeves killed the engine, climbed out, walked over to Holloway, who was standing off to the side with a satisfied smile. "Sir, how did you do that?" Holloway's smile widened. "Experience, and a lot of time around these machines." Reeves's eyes narrowed. "Sir, with respect, you said you worked on tanks a long time ago. What did you do, exactly?" Holloway reached into his jacket and pulled out an old, worn wallet. Opened it. Inside was an ID card. Faded. Dated 1978. It read, "Frank Holloway, Civilian Contractor, U.S. Army Tank Automotive Command." Below that, a title, Senior Engineer, M1 Abrams Development Program. Reeves' jaw dropped. You worked on the Abrams when it was being built?" Holloway nodded. "I was part of the team that designed the power pack integration. Worked on the first prototypes in the late 70s. Spent 3 years testing, troubleshooting, fixing problems just like this one." He gestured at the tank. "I know this machine, every bolt, every relay, every quirk, because I helped create it." The mechanics gathered around, staring at the ID. Torres spoke quietly. "Sir, you're a legend. The guys who built the Abrams. You're like tank royalty." Holloway chuckled. "I'm just an old engineer who got lucky, but I love these machines. Still do." He looked at Reeves. "You did good work, Surgeon. You were close. You just needed one more piece of the puzzle." Reeves felt a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. "Sir, I thank you. You just saved our asses." Holloway waved it off. "Happy to help. Just glad I could still be useful." Captain Hernandez chose that moment to walk into the bay. She'd heard the engine start, came to investigate. When she saw Holloway, she stopped. "Who's this?" Reeves straightened. "Ma'am, this is Frank Holloway. He's a civilian contractor who helped design the M1 Abrams back in the 70s. He just identified the problem we've been chasing for 2 days. Fixed it in 5 minutes." Hernandez's eyes widened. She approached Holloway, extended her hand. "Mr. Holloway, Captain Lisa Hernandez, I don't know how to thank you." Holloway shook her hand. "No thanks necessary, Captain. Just glad I could help." Hernandez looked at the tank, then back at Holloway. "Sir, I have a request. We have a briefing tomorrow morning. Before the exercise kicks off, I'd like you to be there. I want my soldiers to meet you, to hear your story. Would you be willing?" Holloway hesitated. "Captain, I'm not really a public speaker." "You don't have to give a speech. Just be there. Let them see the man who helped build the tanks they trust their lives to." Holloway looked at Reeves, at the mechanics, at the tank. Then he nodded. "All right, I'll be there." The next morning, the brigade's main auditorium was packed. Over 300 soldiers, tank crews, mechanics, officers, all gathered for the pre-exercise briefing. Captain Hernandez stood at the podium, gave the standard overview, objectives, safety protocols, expected outcomes. Then she paused. "Before we kick off, I want to introduce someone. Yesterday, we had a critical equipment failure. One of our tanks wouldn't start. My mechanics worked around the clock trying to fix it. They're some of the best in the Army, but they were stumped." She gestured off stage. Then this man showed up, Frank Holloway. He's 82 years old. He helped design the M1 Abrams in the 1970 seconds. He looked at our tank for 5 minutes, found the problem, fixed it, and saved our exercise. She looked out at the audience. "Mr. Holloway, would you please come up here? Holloway walked onto the stage. Slowly, the limp more pronounced under the stage lights. He stood next to Hernandez, looking uncomfortable. But the auditorium erupted. Not polite applause. Genuine, thunderous respect. Soldiers stood. Some hooted, some whistled. Hernandez had to raise her hand to quiet them down. She handed Holloway the microphone. He held it awkwardly, cleared his throat. I'm not sure what to say. I'm just an old engineer who got lucky. A voice from the crowd, one of the tank commanders. Sir, how many tanks did you work on? Holloway thought. All of them. I mean, the prototypes. We built 17 test vehicles between 1976 and 1980. I personally worked on 9 of them. Testing, breaking things, fixing them, learning. Another voice. What was it like? Building something that would be used in combat. Holloway's face grew serious, terrifying, humbling. We knew soldiers would depend on these machines, that lives would be on the line. So we tested everything, pushed every system to failure, because we couldn't afford to get it wrong. Reeves, sitting in the front row, raised his hand. Sir, you said the relay issue we had was a known problem. Why wasn't it in the manual? Holloway smiled sadly. Because we fixed it, or thought we did, changed the manufacturing specs. But sometimes, even decades later, a bad batch slips through. It's rare, but it happens. Hernandez took the microphone back. Mr. Holloway has agreed to spend the day with us. He'll be observing the exercise, and he's offered to answer questions from anyone who wants to learn. I encourage you all to take advantage, because opportunities like this don't come often. After the briefing, Holloway was swarmed. Tank crews wanting to shake his hand, mechanics asking technical questions, young soldiers just wanting to hear stories. And Holloway, despite his initial discomfort, answered every question, told every story, with patience, with humility. Later that afternoon, Reeves found Holloway sitting on the hood of a Humvee, watching tanks maneuver across the training range. He sat down next to him. Sir, can I ask you something? Of course. Why'd you come to the base yesterday? Just visiting? Holloway nodded. Old friend of mine's the base commander. We served together in Germany back in the 80s. He invited me to tour the facilities, see how things have changed. He smiled. Didn't expect to end up fixing a tank. Reeves laughed. Lucky for us, you did. He paused. Sir, what you said this morning, about being terrified, about lives depending on your work. I feel that every day, every repair I make, every system I check, I think about the crews, about making sure they come home. Holloway put a hand on his shoulder. That makes you a good mechanic, Sergeant. The best ones aren't just turning wrenches. They're protecting lives. Never forget that. Reeves nodded. They sat in silence for a while, watching the tanks. Finally, Reeves spoke again. Sir, would you be willing to come back? Maybe once a year? Talk to the new mechanics. Teach them the things that aren't in the manuals? Holloway looked at him. You think they'd want to hear from an old man? Sir, after what you did yesterday, they'd hand on every word. Holloway thought about it, then smiled. All right, I'll come back. On one condition. What's that? You teach them too. Pass on what you know. Because one day, you'll be the old guy, and the next generation will need you. Reeves extended his hand. Deal. They shook. And as the sun set over Fort Hood, 2 mechanics, one at the beginning of his legacy, one at the end, sat together, watching the machines they loved, knowing that the knowledge they carried wasn't just technical, it was sacred, a trust passed from one generation to the next, ensuring that the soldiers who depended on those tanks would always have someone who cared, someone who knew, someone who wouldn't quit until the job was done. 3 months later, the Army Times ran a story. The man who built the Abrams returns to fix one. It included a photo of Holloway standing next to Tank 7, Reeves beside him, both smiling. The article went viral in military circles. Veterans reached out, shared their own stories of old-timers who saved the day, of knowledge that couldn't be taught in a classroom, of the importance of respecting those who came before. And Frank Holloway The 82-year-old engineer who'd helped create a legend became a legend himself, not because he sought recognition, but because he showed up, shared what he knew, and reminded everyone that sometimes the best technology isn't the newest. It's the wisdom that comes from experience, the kind you can download, the kind you earn, one tank, one problem, one solution at a time.